I'm going to say something that might sound harsh. After 60, many adult children do not pull away because love died, they pull away because being near you has started to feel heavier than being away from you. I do not say that to hurt you. I do not say that to frighten you. I say it because it is true, and truth is kinder than pretending. I have lived long enough to know that a soft lie can keep a family sick for 20 years, while a hard truth can begin healing before the sun goes down. If I speak plainly to you, it is because I respect you. If I speak plainly to you, it is because I believe you can still change what matters. Listen to me carefully, because this teaching is worth more than pride, worth more than being right, worth more than one more holiday meal where everybody smiles with tight mouths and leaves early. I have seen families split without a slammed door. I have seen families die by inches. I have seen it in kitchens. I have seen it in hospital rooms. I have seen it on front steps where one child sits in the car a little too long before coming inside. If you understand what I am about to tell you, you may still bring warmth back into a house that has gone cold. 1. The first thing you need to stop doing is turning every conversation into correction. When your grown child comes near you, they should not feel like they are entering a courtroom. They should not feel like every word will be measured, weighed, and found small. Advice has its place. Guidance has its place. But if every visit becomes a lesson, your child will learn that distance is easier than love. My grandfather used to say, when you grip a clay bowl too hard, even clear water jumps out. I remember a man named Elias. He was 68, with hands thick from 30 years of roofing houses. Even in winter, his knuckles looked sunburned and cracked. His daughter would come by on Sundays with her 2 boys. She brought a foil pan of cornbread, sometimes a sack of oranges, sometimes nothing but tired eyes and a polite smile. Elias loved her deeply, but every visit turned the same way. He corrected how she parked. He corrected how she disciplined the boys. He corrected how much salt she put in the beans. If she mentioned money, he told her what job she should have taken. If she mentioned her marriage, he told her what kind of wife her mother had been. Even his kindness came sharpened. One afternoon the wind was pushing cold dust across the porch, and the screen door kept tapping the frame. The younger boy dropped a spoon, and Elias snapped, "That's why children today have no discipline." The room went quiet. Only the pot on the stove made a soft rattling sound. His daughter set down her coffee. She did not fight. She did not cry. She just said, "Daddy, I leave your house feeling small every time." Then she gathered the boys, zipped up their coats, and went out into the gray day. For 3 weeks, nobody came. That silence finally reached Elias where words had not. He sat alone one morning with cold eggs on his plate and the ticking wall clock sounding louder than a hammer. When his daughter finally answered the phone, he did something he had not done in years. He said, "Come over, and I will listen more than I speak." The next Sunday, he asked the older boy about school and did not interrupt. He asked his daughter how tired she was and did not turn her answer into a lecture. When she burned the biscuits a little, he buttered them anyway. The house did not become perfect. But it became softer. And softer was enough to begin. Moral: if your child must choose between being loved and being corrected, they will eventually choose distance. 2. The second thing that changes is this: you must stop keeping score with your sacrifices. Too many parents speak the language of debt when what their children need is the language of love. After all I did for you. After all I gave up. After all I carried. Maybe those things are true. Maybe you did carry more than anyone knows. But if every old sacrifice is dragged into every new disagreement, then love begins to feel like a bill that never stops arriving. My grandmother used to say, "A hand that gives and then points at the gift has already closed into a hook." I remember a woman named Marlena. She was 63, always in a clean apron, always with peppermint in her purse, always with one eye on the clock. Her son called less and less, and she could not understand why. "I gave that boy everything," she told me. I worked double shifts. I wore the same winter coat for 10 years so he could play ball. I skipped meals so he could eat. All of that was true. Every bit of it. But when he came over, she laid those truths on the table like stones. If he arrived late, she said, I never kept you waiting when you were small. If he forgot to call, she said, I remember when I sat up nights with your fevers. If he brought store-bought pie instead of baking one, she said, I used to make everything from scratch, but maybe those days meant nothing. She did not scream. She did not insult. She did something harder to defend. She wrapped guilt in a wounded voice and called it honesty. One July evening, the kitchen was thick with the smell of fried catfish and hot oil. The fan in the window hummed, but it could not beat back the heat. Her son stood at the sink rinsing plates while the sky outside turned copper. Finally he said, very quietly, Mama, every time I come here, I leave owing more. I never get to arrive as a son. I only arrive as a debt. That sentence broke something open in her. The next week Marlena took out an old notebook where she had written every hard season of her life. Not for memory. For proof. She sat on the porch while a storm built far off over the fields, and she tore those pages out one by one. When her son came the following Sunday, she handed him a plate, touched his shoulder, and said, You do not owe me your suffering to prove you love me. Sit down and eat while it's hot. He began staying longer after that. Then he began bringing the grandchildren. Moral: love that keeps receipts will one day find itself eating alone. Stay right here, because what I am about to share next is where many families begin breaking without anyone raising their voice. 3. The third thing you need to understand is that unspoken pain often disguises itself as control. A lonely parent will call it standards. A grieving parent will call it concern. A frightened parent will call it wisdom. But your grown children can feel the difference between care and control. They know when your grip is coming from love, and they know when your grip is coming from fear you refuse to name. My grandfather used to say, when winter sits too long in the river, people start calling the ice a bridge. I remember a man named Jonas. After his wife died, he lived alone in a yellow house with a sagging fence and a bird feeder that stayed full because he forgot to watch the birds. His daughter visited every Wednesday evening after work. At first she came with soup, groceries, and stories from her office. But over time Jonas started tightening around her. He questioned where she had been before arriving. He criticized the man she was dating. He complained if she stayed only an hour. He made little rules. Don't wear your shoes in here. Don't put your bag there. Don't come empty-handed. Call before you leave work. None of the rules were really about shoes, bags, or groceries. They were about fear. One cold evening in November, rain ticked against the windows like fingernails. Jonas had heated canned stew, and the metal spoon kept ringing against the bowl because his hand shook more than he admitted. His daughter came in tired, wet at the shoulders, carrying a loaf of bread under one arm. Before she could even sit down, he said, You're later every week now. I guess I know where I stand. She stood still for a long moment. Then she set the bread on the counter and said, Dad, I miss Mom too. But I cannot be punished for not being her. That house went very still. Jonas looked at the empty chair that still sat across from his own. He looked at the cardigan hanging on the hook by the pantry, the one he had not moved since spring. He looked at the stew skin forming on top of his bowl. For the first time, he said the true thing. He did not say, You are selfish. He did not say, You do not care. He said, When this house gets dark, I get afraid. That changed everything. His daughter crossed the kitchen and held his face in both hands the way her mother used to. They made a new plan together. Not rules. A plan. One dinner a week. One phone call on Saturdays. One neighbor with a spare key. The control loosened because the truth had finally spoken. Moral: If you hide your pain behind control, your child will pull away from the control before they ever discover the pain. 4. The fourth thing you need to stop doing is grieving the life they did not choose in front of the life they did choose. Some of you do not mean to wound your children. You think you are just telling the truth. You think you are just wanting better. But when you keep comparing their real life to the life you imagine for them, you make every visit feel like a failure report. Your son hears that his work is not respectable enough. Your daughter hears that her home is not proper enough. Your grandchild hears that love depends on meeting an old plan. My grandmother used to say, corn does not bend its head in shame because it grew in a different row. I remember a woman named Teresa. She had one son. He lived in the city in a small upstairs apartment above a laundromat. He repaired musical instruments for a living. Not doctors. Not lawyers. Violins, trumpets, old guitars with split wood and tired strings. Teresa hated that life for him. She had dreamed of a brick house, a dependable office, grandchildren in pressed clothes running through a safe yard. Instead, when she visited, she climbed narrow stairs that smelled like detergent and radiator heat. She heard buses sighing outside. She saw second-hand chairs, stacked records, houseplants reaching toward one window. Her son tried so hard. He made lentil soup in a dented pot. He bought fresh bread from the corner bakery. He set out tea in mismatched cups. But Teresa could not stop herself. Still no savings plan. Still renting. Still working on instruments. Even her praise had poison in it. Well, at least you seem happy. One evening, snow had turned gray at the edges of the sidewalk. Inside, the apartment glowed with the yellow light of two lamps, and somewhere downstairs a dryer thumped steadily like a slow drum. Her son lifted an old trumpet from the table and polished the brass with a cloth. "This one belongs to a school kid," he said. He thought it was ruined. He cried when I told him I could save it. Teresa almost answered with another criticism. But then she heard something she had not listened for before. Pride. Not foolish pride. Clean pride. Useful pride. The kind a person feels when their hands do something that helps another life. Then he said, without looking up, "Mom, I need you to stop mourning me while I am sitting right here." That sentence was plain. It was not cruel. It was the truth. Teresa looked around again. She smelled bread, metal polish, and black tea. She heard the city, yes, but also peace. She saw not failure but a life with care in it. The next time she visited, she brought soup and asked him to show her how a cracked violin is repaired. He smiled like a child for the first time in years. Moral: when you bless the life your child has built, you stop making them defend their existence in your presence. 5. This is the one that matters most: your home must become safe for the truth. Hear me now. Hear me now. Hear me now. If your grown children cannot tell you the truth without being punished, corrected, shamed, or frozen out, they will stop telling you the truth. Then they will stop bringing you their real life. Then they will bring you only weather talk, polite smiles, and holiday casseroles. After that, they will bring you less and less of themselves until one day you are sitting in a quiet house telling everybody, "I don't know why they drifted." This is the one that matters most because everything else grows from here. You cannot guilt them back. You cannot lecture them back. You cannot corner them back. You cannot shame them back. But sometimes, if you can make one room safe, one table safe, one conversation safe, truth will walk back through your door on its own feet. My grandfather used to say, even a wounded deer will drink where the water does not shout. I remember a woman named Rosalind. She was 71 and proud in the way some people become proud when pride is the only coat they think still fits. She had survived a hard marriage, buried a sister too young, beaten an illness once already, and learned to do everything herself. Her daughter lived only 40 minutes away, but months would pass between visits. Rosalind told everybody the same story: young people are selfish now. That's all this is. But I watched her closely, and I knew that was not all this was. One autumn afternoon, a sharp wind was carrying dry leaves across her yard. Inside her house, a pot of chicken broth simmered with celery and onion, and the whole place smelled warm and clean. She had set the table for two. Her daughter arrived with a bakery box and that careful smile people wear when they are entering a place where they expect to be bruised. They sat down. Spoons touched bowls. The old refrigerator clicked on and off. For a while they talked about harmless things. Traffic. Weather. A neighbor's new fence. Then Rosalind made the old mistake. She said, "You know, if you came around more, I wouldn't have to hear from strangers how my own grandchild is doing." Her daughter put down her spoon. Not hard. Just final. The wind slapped a branch against the siding outside. Somewhere down the street a dog barked twice. Then her daughter said, "Mom, do you really want to know why I stay away?" That was the doorway. That was the sacred little doorway many parents close with one sentence. "Don't talk to me like that. After all I've done. You're too sensitive." That never happened. Rosalind opened her mouth, and I could almost hear those old words lining up. But illness had humbled her a little. Age had humbled her a little. Empty rooms had humbled her a little. So she said, "Yes. Tell me true." Her daughter's eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. She said, "I stay away because when I tell you something hard, you turn it into my failure or your suffering. When I was getting divorced, you made it about how embarrassed you were. When I said I was exhausted, you told me women in your time had it worse. When my son struggled in school, you said I was too soft. I do love you. But I do not feel safe here." Rosalind did not collapse. She did not defend. She did not rewrite history while the wound was still open. She sat with both hands around her bowl, feeling the heat against her palms, and listened to the sound of her own breathing. She looked at her daughter's face and saw not accusation but years of bracing. Then she did the hardest thing an elder can do when pride has sat on the throne too long. She said, "You are telling me the truth, and I have not made truth easy for you." Her daughter started crying then. Real crying. Shoulder-deep crying. Rosalind got up slowly, the floor creaking under her slippers, and stood beside her. She did not rush to excuse herself. She did not say, "I did my best," though maybe she had. She put one hand on her daughter's back and said, "From today forward, I want this house to be a place where you do not have to protect yourself from me." It was not magic. One sentence does not erase 20 years. But it began something holy. They made rules for honesty. No interrupting. No old debts dragged in. No punishment after truth. 3 weeks later, her daughter came back. A month later, she brought her son. By winter, the house had laughter in it again, not constant, not perfect, but real. The kind that rises on its own when people no longer have to watch every word. That is why this point matters most. Adult children do not stay close to the house where they must wear armor. They stay close to the house where they can set it down. Moral: if you want your children nearer, make your presence safer than their silence. So now I leave you with a question, and I want you to answer it honestly down in the comments. When your child comes near you, do they feel judged, indebted, managed, mourned, or safe? If this is the kind of conversation you have been looking for, subscribe to this channel. We are not collecting viewers here. We are collecting people who remember. Come back next week. I am not done teaching yet.